Good evening to you all. Welcome to the show tonight. I have never been as excited as I am tonight about our shows. The guest we have tonight. I was speaking to him in the studio early on, and I said that one of the things that people have asked me has been, what do I get out of some of these shows? And what I've said to them is it's the conversations that we have with the guests before we go live and the nuggets of wisdom, the personal stories that they share before we go live. That is just amazing, amazing. And our guest tonight has been no different. He's just blown my mind. I was listening to him talk about a story, and I asked him. I said, "Look, please, 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 can you share that story for our viewers? Because I believe it is something that everyone needs to listen to in this new season, this new time we're in, this new normal, as it's being called." Um, so if you're already on here, please share this out with your friends. If we're live on Facebook, we're live on Instagram, we're live on it's on Twitter. The handles are showing there on the screen. So please share this. Get your friends involved. Get them notified. What you're going to hear tonight is going to blow your mind. Honestly, it is going to blow your mind. And without taking too much of your time, we're just going to get into it. Remember to share those links out. This is really fantastic information that you need to listen to. Our guest this evening is a very good friend of mine. It's amazing when you see somebody is doing well, is your friend, right? So this one is my brother, not just my friend. But Bode Olutunbi is the managing partner and the CEO of a consulting firm, Peoplesource Consulting, and they work with leading companies across Africa. Bode has over 26 years experience in this particular field. He's had leadership roles in the past, worked across financial services, the public sector, FMCG, voluntary sector, not only in Nigeria but across the countries. He's worked in the United Kingdom as well, and he's worked as a consultant advising a lot of blue chip companies. I looked on their website. They've got an amazing client list on that website. But Bode has he's designed, he's developed, he's delivered several learning and development programs for leading firms across Africa. So you're going to get that Pan-African perspective this evening as he talks not only about experiences in the UK but experiences in Africa and different companies in Africa. You know what? I'm not going to waste too much time talking about this. Bode, you are welcome to the show tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Aki. It's nice having and being with you. Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you so much for again taking the time out of your busy diary to be here with us this evening. We really appreciate that. Now, there's a question I have to ask you. And we were talking about this before going live. How do you manage being in the United Kingdom right now for this interview and having all these business initiatives across the nations of Africa? How did this journey begin?
That's an interesting question. Yes, you did ask me earlier on, Aki, and I talked about a few paradigms that have helped us as we started the journey way back from 2009. And one of the first we learned along the way as we started the journey, but initially the whole idea was to be who God has called us to be in those environments. We knew we were not going to be the largest player in the space, so we built a small team, core team, and then we looked for partners. Initially, when we started, our base being in the UK, we literally used partners who were international. And then as we got on the ground and we began to build relationships, we built a pool of partners, many of who are still working with us today. This is 2020. And as we began to grow across regions in Africa, many of them began to do work with us across regions as well. So some of the paradigms that have helped us, one was to switch from what we found as we began to work in emerging markets, particularly, was a high level of a transactional mindset to business, a high level of a transactional mindset to relationships, to business interactions. But we came into the market with more of a relational orientation. We feel that if we build trusting, transparent, value adding relationships with clients, then they will stay with us over the long haul. That has paid off extremely well for us as a business. Over the first years, obviously, that means that we grew slower than most clients. I mean, than most of our competitors who were focused on the transactions were pretty fast with it. But we were much slower. We wanted to make sure that we only did work that we could really deliver on excellently. One of our core values was delivering our client relationships with excellence, delivering our client work with excellence. And you can imagine excellence is a moving target, and trying to deliver work in an excellent way in an emerging market environment where, in many cases, even from the client side, average is acceptable. So how do you deliver outstanding when average is acceptable? And most of your competitors are willing to deliver average because they just want the transaction. But you're telling the client, I think you can actually get more traction on what you're looking for. Let's reframe your expectations and step it up a notch. So some clients will be excited about that and they would say, let's go back and revisit what we're expecting out of this project. But majority of clients are moving with time. They're looking at the environment that they are in and they're going, there's so much opportunity, so little infrastructure and resources and everything you need to harness those opportunities. So the more opportunities I harness, the more money I make within the shortest possible time. So why would I want? Nobody's asking for excellence. Why would I want it? So that meant our client base was streamlined, but it also meant that over time, the sort of clients we've built are really leading. You talked about leading organizations. They don't have to be international. We work with a lot of international organizations, but we also work with a lot of local organizations who are leading in their mindset, and they're growing, fast growing. And that's because of the sort of name that we built in the market over time. And what I was sharing with you, Akin, one was that whole mindset of not being transactional. Two, was also the mindset of investing in the people who worked with us, particularly the core people, and not holding on to them as if they were our own and we controlled them. We went in there knowing that they are an asset, but they bring something to the table, and it was a symbiotic relationship, and that's helped us a lot as well.
One thing you mentioned there, Bode, that I think we need to expand on a little bit is this issue of not just being transactional, but being relational. And there was a story of actually two stories you shared that I think our viewers need to listen to. One was an engagement with a foreign partner, and the other one was when you went into a conference and someone called you out. Can you share those two stories, please? I think those are just phenomenal to be hearing
Mm,
coming from someone in this day and age where people would do anything to get business.
mm. Well, I think one of the first things, like I said earlier on, that we decided at the beginning, and you and I know when you want to make difficult decisions, when you're going into an environment where there will be difficult decisions for you to make, you need to set your paradigms right before you even go into the environment, so that you have a frame of reference with which you filter the information you're getting and make the right decisions. You can the complexity becomes very simple just because you have a measure of frameworks that you are engaging with it through. So one of the paradigms we had made up our minds was we're going in there being ourselves. So people would say you can't really build a business without giving a bribe or engaging in unethical activities in an environment that is emerging, not just Nigeria, but across Africa or even Russia or other places like that, where maybe the ethical standards may be different, perspectives may be different, or where compliance and compliance systems that drive compliance are not robust enough. The processes are there. Compliance processes are there, but the systems to drive them are not robust enough. And so there are lots of loopholes, and people are used to those loopholes. And invariably, it becomes a culture for you to pay your way through transactions and stuff like that. And we had this engagement, and it was an international organization. They partnered with the state government and also some local partners, and they wanted us to work with them to integrate their team. So it was a cultural engagement, just trying to enhance the culture of the organization. And as we began to engage with them, we'd been on 2 client interactions with them. We'd met some of the experts who are the senior people in the organization, and the lower people lower down the ladder were more the locals, and there was a gap in understanding. And so they looked at our profile, our exposure, and stuff like that, and thought, okay, we probably look like sort of people who can deliver. And we did a pitch, and thought, oh, great, we like this. And so we went away, and we were waiting for the engagement to start. And so on an occasion, I was back here in the UK, and I called the client contact, who happens to be a local. And as I began to speak to him, he then broached the issue of layering our bill to make sure that he got something and whoever else was in his cohort got something of the transaction. And then we could move the thing forward. And at that
But
point,
let me ask you a question there. Is that
yes,
still a practice that you see a lot of in Africa?
to be honest with you, it still is. Like I said something, I said there are processes in place to reinforce ethical behavior in business, but there needs to be robust systems. So if there is no accountability, if you know that when you do such things you're unlikely to be reprimanded, if there's a system through which the money that comes into your hands in any role you are engaging with, and that money shouldn't have come into your hands, but there's a system through which that money is funneled so that other people also benefit from what you have done, then it's become something that is it has to be dismantled completely. So in quite a number of environments you have that, but there will be individuals in the system who are also forthright. You understand me? And if you are resolute with what you want, and what you want is to do the right thing, ultimately it does work out for you, but it takes time. So you need patience. And I said earlier on about you need to go into the environment not expecting to a rush. There will be transactions that come your way. There will be good transactions, but they will not be your transactions. And you have to tell yourself, this is an exciting project. We would love to work on this project, but it's not ours. And we know why it's not ours, and we'll pull back. And if it's ours,
Wow.
then the conversation, and we've had experiences where indeed the conversation, we've pulled back and the conversation has moved forward. The one I just shared with you was one. Eventually, we moved
So,
forward with that
what
project.
what happened? What happened in that situation? How
So,
did you move
so,
forward?
so in that instance, when the guy broached the issue, obviously I stuttered, and I sort of like ended the phone call pretty abruptly, and I made up my mind I wasn't going to engage in that process. And then a few days later, I got speaking to someone who mentors us, who also believes in these values. And he was asking how the business was going. And I told him about this transaction, really interesting transaction, but we're not going forward with it because somebody has broached that we give them a bribe. And the man just blatantly said, no, but that's not the reason why God called you into this environment. God called you into this environment to challenge that mindset, not to walk away from it. The man has broached his own reality. Bring your own to the table. What is the worst that will happen? You will lose a transaction, and the man will never speak to you. But what is the best that could happen? You will win a client's heart, and you will win somebody's soul as well. And when I weighed the two, I thought, what's the risk? God called us into this. He will provide for us. The goal that God has called us into business for, at the end of the day, is not profit. We will make a profit. It's impact, it's transformation, it's change. And you don't do that by walking away from opportunities that you have to influence. So it was an opportunity for us to influence. As God would have it in that instance, a few days later, one of the higher up people in the organization called us to find out what was going on. I mean, we called in to find out what was, to try and speak to the guy again after I had spoken to my mentor. And then what happened was he wasn't on site. Somebody else who also knew about our pitch got to speak with me. And from there on, he linked us up with one of the senior guys there. And they were like, we've been waiting to get this transaction going. Let's move forward. So the transaction moved forward without the guy. The guy found out later that we were now engaging in the transaction. But that was one case. But there are cases where we actually didn't get the business. But it's okay. We shared what God's mind is about it. God is the one who's taking us there. He's the one who will prosper us. There is no blessing we want apart from the blessing that God gives. And when we make compromises, it becomes a challenge, and becomes a challenge for you, even in your heart, and it becomes a challenge for your organization. And where is the credibility? There are people in your organization who, I told you earlier on about the team we're building. And we said people have a mindset that is transactional. People have a mindset that you don't pay tax. People have a mindset that you pay bribes. You do bribes. So we see people who've come from supposedly Christian organizations and joined us in our business. And sometimes they're like, "You pay tax? We don't pay tax where I'm coming from." Like, well, why wouldn't you? That's what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be a standard. So it's the same thing. What is the motivation for excellence when average is acceptable? Okay, that's a very big question.
Wait. Can you say that again? What
What
is
is the
the
motivation
motivation?
for excellence when average is acceptable? So in other words, your environment accepts average as the standard, as the norm. But when you go in there, if you want to amplify your impact in an environment, you don't go in there and become like everybody else.
You
You know,
know,
you don't go in there. No.
you have just redefined the topic for tonight, because when we're talking about the face of talent,
Yeah.
what we're
Yeah.
saying here is we need people who have values, who have a value system. We need
Very much
people
so.
who understand that mediocrity is a disease that needs to be fought, not just in the African context, but in any context. Mediocrity needs to be fought. And if you bring people with this kind of mentality and say, these are the people that we're employing in our organization, it would be a lot easier to then layer on top of that any sort of technical skills that we need to give to them.
Very true. Very,
Whoa,
very
whoa,
true.
whoa, whoa, whoa. Now,
Very, very true.
now, you talked about a story at a conference. Can you
Yes.
tell that story again for our viewers to hear? 'Cause
We
for
we
me, when
you
I had that story, but let me tell you this, it sounded like the reward for what you turned down and the way you have
mm,
chosen to live. Tell us that story. Tell us that story.
it's interesting. I have a compendium of all these stories that because uh, acculturation is a big part of what we do. So if we're saying that we want to be excellent as an organization, it reverberates into different aspects of what we do. Even how we engage with customers, how we engage with talents who are looking for work. We've had recommendations from talents who didn't get jobs. You pitch someone, you place four candidates before a client, and they choose the one they want. But all the four candidates, including the one who got the job, come back and they're like, Peoplesource, I have never been treated like this before. We've actually had a very senior person in an organization who called and said, which organization are you calling? He was a director in a business and we're looking for him to move into another business. And he goes, I have never been treated this way by any recruitment organization. Can I have a meeting with you guys to see what we can do with you? So it works for our brand as well. You understand? But anyway, so we have that good name. We believe that we need to have a good name in the market. So we work hard for that good name. But on this occasion, you've mentioned earlier on that I live here, and until COVID started, and we've also tried to really digitize our business a lot more. A lot of what I did was on the ground. So I did a lot of traveling on the ground. I would meet with my people on the ground, coach them on the ground, meet with clients on the ground, business development on the ground, etc. And in one of those instances, I went and I did all of that, and none of the transactions we were planning on worked. So you can imagine my frame of mind. I was thinking, let me go back home and just relax for a bit. I mean, Nigeria is stressful because it was in Lagos then. And so the day before my trip, no, 2 days before my trip, I traveled on a Monday. So on the Friday, I was sitting in the office, and then an email comes in, and it's a conference, and it was invite only, but it was free, but you needed to register. So I registered to see if they would let me go. I saw some interesting speakers, and I thought, oh, good for networking. And so I ended up there. They invited me. I ended up there, and after the main pitch, which was around mobile money, there was an HR pitch. And I thought, I need to sit in there. So I go in there and I see this lady. She's somebody who's a contact of mine on LinkedIn. She's a very senior person in one of the technology businesses, really HR director of the technology businesses. And so I thought, oh, opportunity to turn Facebook into a real-time relationship. Let me walk up to this lady and introduce myself. She was preparing to take her talk. So as I walked towards her, she turned around, saw me, and she goes, I know you. So my pitch stuttered, almost immediately. So I walked up and I said, yes, my name is Bode Olutunbi and I'm from Peoplesource Consulting. Before I finished mentioning Peoplesource Consulting, she just said, she grabbed my hands and she goes, Peoplesource. And then she looked around the room and started calling different people who I did not know, who are in the audience, but who are actually directors in their own rights in HR in different roles. So, of course, her own network. So she was calling them Funke, Yemi, Kemi. And this Funke, one of them, for instance, was the director of HR in Coca-Cola. From that engagement, when they all came, they now said, you are the guy behind Peoplesource. You guys are doing excellent work in the market. I wanted to say, no, we're just a small organization trying to do our best. And I just felt the Holy Spirit say, but they just stop. Listen to what I am doing with you in this market. Listen to the good name I'm giving you. And then they told us our life story from the client side. When I got to the office on the Monday, I told the guys, I said, guys, on Friday when I left here, I thought if somebody was willing to pay us maybe 250 million, we would sell this business, and it's just too stressful. Now, you guys are really lucky to have Peoplesource on your CVs because of the name that we have out there. Within 2 weeks of my getting back here, we just got a call from Coca-Cola International, and they wanted us to be on their. We became, from that interaction, we at least about 4 or 5 clients, major clients, globals, that we began to work with. So a good name, it takes time to build. But once God has given you a good name and you invest in that good name, it continues to reverberate. I don't have to be in Nigeria or in Uganda or anywhere now. Peoplesource has a good name in those places. As long as I have somebody who has the mindset like us, it can run and even grow better. If they have more ambition than I have, it can grow better. A good name is the best asset you can have. That's why look at brand value in organizations. And we're not talking about, when God takes you into an environment and builds your brand for you, it's not reputation management we're talking about now. We're not talking about you've got dodgy things that you're doing, but nobody seems to know about it. And so the impression is that you are wholesome. We're talking about you are wholesome from the inside out. And that's why I asked that question initially. What is the motivation for excellence when average is expected? So if you go into an environment and average is expected, it has to be something from within you that is stirring up the desire for excellence in an environment where it's not needed. Presumably, it's needed. In fact, it's needed more, but presumably, it is not needed. And then, of course, you need to challenge what exactly excellence means. And I tell my team, so sometimes you're like, excellence is when everything is pristine and is lovely. No. You can go in, those places, if you're on the Third Mainland Bridge, if you're in Lagos, there are places like that in Kenya, I know in Nairobi, where there are shacks, or even in South Africa, if you've ever been to Cape Town. I remember when my wife and I went to Cape Town, and we got onto the taxi from the airport, and we're driving into town, and we began to see, it looks like you're here in the UK, but then you see shanty towns left and right because of the inequities in the society at the time. That was way back in 2004 or something. It's changed a bit now. They've sort of like modernized it, but you can still see those because I was there again last year. You can still see those shanties, and so you begin to think, there can't be any excellence in those environments, but there can be. It's inside of you. It's in you and the way you do the things you do. Let me give you a very, very simple example that what I mean. A young man joined us. He's in the States now. He joined us from a much bigger consulting firm. So we took him on, and he had a very, very good work ethic and everything. So we took him on. This guy would add a lot of value to us, and he did. So he became our team lead. And we were working on a project. A phone call comes in. Apparently, somebody had spoken to him the day before, and she was looking for work. And she sent her CV, but she wanted him to just review her CV to see that it was okay if she needed to do anything before we placed it before the client. And so he said, "Oh, don't worry, we're not placing it before the client for another 2 days. I'll have a look at it. I mean, let's speak tomorrow. I'll call you tomorrow at 12. But he got really busy on that day and he couldn't call her. So while we were in the conversation, she calls and he's busy doing the work with me. We're on the same table. So he picks up the phone. Oh, hello. I'm so sorry. Okay. So the lady is saying, when can I call you back? Of course, she's the one looking for something. When can I call you back? And he goes, okay, call me back in about 30 minutes. I should be done with what I'm doing. So I stop what I'm doing. And I go, what was going on there? And he explains what I just told you to me. And I go, so she was expecting a call from you. And he goes, yes. And I said, but you've asked her to call you in 30 minutes. And he said, yes. I said, no. Call her back and tell her, I will call you in 30 minutes. You are sending a message that that person is valued. No, you're not helping them. They are bringing value to the table and you value them as an individual. Now, all of these paradigms that the guy was like, oh my goodness, I've never had to think about things that way. Some organizations will even be, why are you calling them? They should call you. The average mentality in that kind of in an environment that is transactional will think that way. So it's up to those little things. So a lot of my time working with the team was building acculturation, working with them at that level. Now, this I think has a huge implication on where we are now with all the transformation that is going on.
I was just
Those
about to
individuals,
ask you that, Bode,
yes,
is that COVID-19 has changed the playing field for many organizations, and
it has.
it's acted like some sort of accelerant for digital
Mm,
transformation.
yeah,
And there's a Gartner report that says 32% of organizations are now choosing to replace staff, right? But hearing what you're saying there and the value that you have put into your employees, to what degree do you think that staffing models would change? Because what you're talking about there is a fundamental rethink of how you staff roles within
yes,
organizations. What has
yes.
changed for you? What sort of models are you starting to see?
Well, the thing is, at this point, somebody was asking me something around the whole impact of COVID and stuff like that. And I said, well, we all know it's impacted everything. It's impacted communities. It's impacted countries. It's inclined us to be a little bit more nationalist in terms of countries and leadership. It's changed the face of leadership. You understand? It's changed the expectations of employees or talent. It's changed the way we see opportunities. So it's really changed everything. And then obviously it's changed our habits in many ways as well. You understand? So when we think about the changes that it's brought in terms of workplace and staffing, the view of the workplace has really changed. Now it's emerging, but it's changed in some ways, or it's changed already. For instance, for definitely we're not going back to the full traditional workplace paradigms that we had before. So many of us have been working from home. Initially, before COVID, some people were working from home, but not working across geographical spaces, not working across regions to the degree that they work now. So maybe you might have some platforms where people worked across regions, but in terms of people who work within organizations, not many of them were working across regions. Now, the thing is, so that has changed. So working from home has become more of a standard. I must say that it doesn't mean that everybody will be working from home. I don't think so. Research doesn't even support that. But research does show that at least 48% of people post-COVID will have some measure of work from home added onto their normal work schedule. So there'll be a measure of working from home and a measure of working on site. Organizations are already looking at who needs to be working from home, who needs to be working on site, what sort of work do they need to be doing, how do we, and it's because organizations have also found out that it is actually there is a lot to save. There's a lot to save from the realities on the ground. I know of companies that have saved up to 25 million pounds in this whole period and are reinvesting that into talent, the development of talent, the acquisition of the right talent, training of staff so that they can deliver at the levels. And of course, skills too will change. The skills that businesses need will change, and the expectations of employees will change. A higher level of flexibility is required. So that changes the whole contract between the organization and the employee. A higher level of so I talked about a higher level of flexibility, for instance, is required. Things like uh, paying more attention to psychological security within the environment becomes a higher order issue now,
What
because
do you
in
mean
an
by
environment,
that?
what I mean by that is how safe does the employee feel when they walk in it. Not physically safe. No, there's that is a regulatory thing. Businesses are having to invest a lot more in trying to make sure that your environment, your workplace is COVID compliant. People feel safe to go to work, and you do your best to make sure that you neutralize any opportunities for infections. So that's you being physically safe. So even on the when you think about HSC requirements, that has taken on a new order now. But apart from that, the psychology, the frame of mind of the individual. So the individual's well-being has taken on a new level, because the individual who is at home and does not have the opportunity for the interactions, the social interactions that we've taken for granted before COVID-19, there's an impact on you. And don't forget that we're also going through, this is not just businesses going through change, society is going through change, including losses of life, which has an impact on you as well in terms of your psychological state. But psychological security also relates to the way work is done in the business, and how safe you feel to bring your ideas to the table, how secure you feel to work when you're working with your leaders, so and stuff like that. So all the whole environment needs to be more savvy about people, more people savvy, more emotion savvy, more mental, not just mental awareness, but mental health savvy. You understand? And leaders need to learn that. There's certain things that you would normally do that you would, and that you would, where, so for instance, you would look at the, and this is very relevant for the emerging markets, where people will talk about pressure. You put pressure on someone to deliver. And I remembered an environment where I used to work, where that was the language. I remembered working on an organization where within a week of me starting the job there, I went for a meeting, and the boss came into this is a very senior person in the organization, comes into the meeting. He's speaking to managers in that boardroom, and he goes, I have just met with the CEO. We're not delivering on our numbers, and I've committed to him to sack 5 people in this room today. And so murmuring begins in the room. And I was the
Wow.
newest person in that organization. Now, that man never sacked anybody. In fact, that man is somebody that I have a very good relationship with today. But threats was part of the way of stirring up people to become agile. Now, what does that have? Now, some people will respond to that. So it's like negative motivation. Some people will respond to that. But what implications does it have on your mindset? What implications does it have on your psychology? What implications does it have on your frame of mind? And long term, what are the costs? Those sort of things, you can't do them in this kind of environment. Because let me tell you why. Because the game has also changed. It's now a talent driven environment. I can sit in my home and work. People want to work for more than one employer now. And people want to choose what they do. Employers are thinking about how do we make our relationship, the psychological contract with our staff, more personalized. So previously,
Wow.
HR would think about framing solutions that will meet the needs of staff. Now, HR is thinking about how do we have a perk box, a box of solutions, and to determine, and each individual will determine which one works best for them. And how do we
Wow.
drive, how does that drive what we do with them? So it's a completely different frame of mind, completely different paradigm. So even leaders need to change. So how do you influence or drive remote workers, so people who are remote, I
Yes.
was, to deliver value? No,
Before we say that, there's a question on how do we drive remote workers? I think that's the key point. But before we do that, there's a question here on YouTube which
mm,
says, do you then walk away if the expectation of what good looks like is average? How do you begin to change that mindset so you can
fantastic.
make an impact?
Fantastic. That is the key. So for us in the environment that we've worked with, we've met many clients who would have an expectation, and maybe there were 4 or 5 of us pitching for the work, and everybody else would pitch at their level of expectation, and we would pitch what is possible, but we would also share why what is possible might add more value to them longer term. There's a possibility that what is possible would cost them more, but if you're looking at cost, then there might be a challenge. If you're looking at value, so as a consultant, you need to be able to sell value. You understand, to the client. When you sell value, you're not selling a product. You're selling much more than that. You understand? So once you're able to sell value, and you are an organization that is focused on a relationship. So when you're focused on a relationship, they see it in everything you do. They see it in your communication. They see it in your interactions. They see it well before you interact with them at a pitch. They see it in the way you interact with them. They see it in the way you value everybody in the organization. They see it in the way you value your colleagues. When I go into meetings with people, with my colleagues, I never call anybody less than me. If I go into a room with the guy who used to drive me at the time, I would mention, this is my colleague. If I go into a room with an officer who is four rungs lower than me, he's my colleague. We are associates. So that whole language, the whole persona, they already have, it builds a persona of trust and reputation for you. So you go in there, you challenge the thinking. If the client says they don't want what is excellent, but you know that what is average will do the job for them, then there's nothing wrong with that. But the thing is, you started the conversation, you build a relationship with them. You understand? And you keep trying to move the bar, move the needle. You don't even have to. There are certain things that you don't have to. So, for instance, when I work with clients, so I'll give you another example. Over this period now, we've been doing a lot of online training engagements. So we have some partners who are in France, and we do a lot of work with them across Africa. So one of the sort of chaps we've been working with in this last few months have been C-level staff. So the guy is talking to me in their organization. They're in a project and they're partnering with some Chinese, with a Chinese organization. So for him as a C-level person, he needs to build trust and rapport with the Chinese guys who are the key guys there. They've been working on this project, and he can see that level of connection that isn't there is hindering mutual interests and the growth of the project, of the progress of the project. And so, but that's not the reason why I was engaging with him. We're engaging with him to talk about things like difficult conversations with people, to talk about things like how do you lead in a transverse kind of environment where you don't have any hierarchical influence on anyone, and you need to leverage power bases that you have, and you need to leverage influence tactics that you have. And how do you meander, or should I say, how do you integrate those two, the power bases you have, being aware of them, and the influence tactics, being aware of all the influence tactics that are available, not just the ones that are in your sweet spot, and using them to influence the situation. But as we got talking, he now said, what I'm trying to do is different. I'm trying to build rapport with people who are from a different culture. Is there anything that can add value to me in this area? We finished the engagement. That was not what the engagement was about. And so that ended. But I told him from that point, like I told everybody on that engagement, I am now a resource for you. So I had to take things to another level. In the course of 2-3 weeks, I find some resource that will be really useful for him. I'm not going to get paid for that, but it's a relationship. I throw that into the box, sent it to him. It's radically changed the way he's seeing his Chinese partners, because he's now a lot more savvy about what relationships mean, what value means, what trust means, what works with them and what doesn't. But it also means that I'm now speaking to him about certain engagements and certain things that he can do to step up the game with his team in his organization. And he heads a large team. So an orientation like that will bring you business, but it will also add value to the organization. And we over the years, we've tended to look at organizations, or to look at even our role as in terms of our existence, from 3 levels. There's a level of the individual, there's a level of the team, and there's a level of the organization. The reality is that organizations don't create value. People do. So you need to be granular in your thinking. People create value. It's the value that an individual creates when comprised into a team that morphs into the team value. And it's that team value, when comprised into an organization, that morphs into organizational value that you and I experience from the organization as excellent service or whatever. So you need to start from the granular level and look at the individual, the team, and the organization. Even with the COVID situation that we're talking about, you need to have that frame of mind at the back of your thinking, setting up your thinking.
Wow. Let me ask you this question here, buddy. Um, you're dealing with a lot of major clients in the different markets that you operate in. What
Yes.
are they asking you for when it comes to talent?
At the moment, the key drivers are there are two. One is agility, and I'll tell you what those sort of things are. So agility and resilience. Well, agility in terms of a mindset that is nimble, agility in terms of skills that allow you to operate at scale in terms of your interactions with team members. So before it was enough for you to have good team working skills, but now you need to be able to really add value in a collaborative way. Who are you doing stuff with? Who are you initiating stuff with? And are you conversant with the tools and the infrastructure that allows you to engage at collaboratively with other team members? Then obviously I mentioned about resilience. So we've been through a lot at this time. You know, even for anyone who's not lost a loved one, we're all in mourning because we've all lost people. So what is the impact of that on you? So are you able to bounce back? And are you able to stay steady when everything else is shaking around you? So are you able to dig deep into yourself? How self-aware are you? So I know I spoke earlier on about the individual, the team, and the
The
organization.
organization.
Organizations that will win now are organizations that have self-aware people. So you're conscious of, you're actually a spectator of your own emotions. You're a spectator of what's going on within you. You understand? And so you're conscious of not just what you're doing. We tend to talk about this when we talk to leaders. And so if you're a leader, you need to be very self-aware because where you don't go, you can't take anybody. You understand? But now every individual needs to be a lot more conscious. And the organization as a whole needs to be a lot more conscious. The team needs to be a lot more conscious. So we need to be more aware as individuals, as teams, and as organizations, so that we can actually be more resilient, more sturdy. Because the environment we're in now, you would call a VUCA environment, volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous. What all that is saying to you is that nothing is certain. Everything is changing. Change and evolution is a constant. In an evolving and constantly changing environment, you cannot afford to be static. So you need to have a nimble orientation. There are skills as well, which we can talk
Yeah.
about, some certain, particularly digital skills, and some other skills that we can also mention that organizations are looking for.
There's a follow-on question here for you on that. So there's a study from Forrester that estimated that about 10% of US jobs would be automated this year. And McKinsey also put something out. They estimated it as half of all US jobs. And the question is this: for someone who is maybe looking for a role out there, they might be thinking, how do I protect myself from this whole issue of automation? Put myself in a place where automation proof in a sense. What would you say to that type of person?
I would say a couple of things. The first thing would be to first recognize that we're not moving into a totally automated environment. What we're moving into is a transformed environment, an environment where digital enables humans to do more high value work. So the first thing would be to look at where you are and ask yourself, what does high value mean in the environment that I'm in? There are some foundational skills that would obviously strengthen you, allow you to bring that value to the table. So if you're a leader, we talk a lot now about digital leadership. So that's a concept. There are programs online. If you Google digital leadership, to come up with all sorts of ideas. So how some things there are changes that one needs to make within oneself. How tech savvy are you? How do you, if you want to connect with people, for instance, as a leader in the traditional environment, you go into the environment, you meet with people, you show yourself as authentic in the interactions you're having. A bit like the example I gave you with the guy I was talking to, who had a phone call. So he sees me, I can connect with him, I'm authentic. But how do you do that when you don't have the workplace environment that you're used to. So it means that remotely, you need to be able to connect with people. That means that you need to be a bit more out there. You need to be able to, so you don't just use social media, for instance, just to share ideas. You use it to connect with the people. You use it to connect with your team. So in the intranet, you tell the people how you're feeling about what's going on. So right now we're going through full COVID. If you tell your team how you're feeling about what's going on, they're going to connect with you more than if you just tell them that the business is trying to do A, B, and C about COVID. You get what I'm trying to say? But the point is, how many leaders are comfortable with that? So part of those skills are things that have to change in terms of your orientation to things, orientation to the use of technology, skills that you need to develop. But there are also basic digital skills that you need to develop. Then you need to be conscious of the whole digital space, not in depth, but you need to understand when people talk about AI, what exactly are they talking about? You know, sometimes you're talking about AI and you're thinking, oh my goodness, the image that comes to your mind is one huge robot. Maybe somebody sent you something on TikTok and you've seen a huge robot taking over an office space. But Alexa, that you and I talk about, is AI. AI includes, so who was, somebody was talking about, a friend, a colleague of mine was setting up a computer a few days ago. And at a point in the process, a voice comes up on the computer and goes, hello, I'm Cortana, blah, 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 blah. And I tell the person, I said, Cortana is more popular than you and I are, and many of our celebrities are in the world now. So Cortana is technology, but it has become a person. Every people are aware of Cortana, of Alexa, and stuff like that. So it's about just being savvy about the changes that are going on, and then thinking about where do we solve problems in the value chain. Where do you create architecture in the value chain? You know, from time immemorial, the market has always paid more for the thinking than the doing. And I say that to people all the time. So
The
you are in a
market
room,
has always paid
always
more
paid more for
for the
those who are
thinking.
thinking, those who are creating a frame that everything else sits on, than for those who execute the thing. It's those who execute the thing that you see a lot more. They are the more visible people. Take the cars, for instance. There's a value chain that creates the car, that gets the car into the forecourt, and you and I go off to VW or whichever other brand, and we buy the car. Now, that whole value chain, money has exchanged hands all along that value chain. Where do you think the most money was exchanged? Who do you think made the most money? Would it be the person who conceived the car, designed it? Would it be the people who worked in the factories to put it together, who you and I tend to see on CNN News and co when they're talking about the marketplace and they talk about manufacturing organizations? They show those who are working in the manufacturing plants. Is it those people? Is it those people who are managing or administrating the whole process? Is it the retailer who then gets the car, ships to them, and then engages with the marketplace and sells? Everyone is more visible, but the person who gets the most is the designer. And that's because, and if you looked at, I'll give you another example, architecture. When you look at a building, there are many people that contributed to the building being erected. You've got the shard now. There are many people that contributed to the shard being erected. Who do you think earned the most money as an individual in that whole value chain? It's architects in emerging markets, and I'm sure even in most global environments, would get at least 10% of the value of the completed work. Try and imagine who else would earn that much in terms of, you've got engineers, you've got builders, you've got so many people who are part of the process, the people who sort out the scaffolding. But the person who conceives it is valued the most by the market. Why? Because they create a framework that everything else sits on. And if they don't create the right framework, the cost of a wobbly infrastructure is too much. So we value their thinking, because so thinking precedes the doing, and the quality of the thinking determines the quality of the doing. What automation will do is take away the need for us to be doing. And so we need to think about, where are the levels of thinking in my own career area? There are some generic levels of thinking. So people who will do change management, problem solvers, people who will create policy in different areas. But then in your own area, even in your own profession, where are the levels of doing and where are the levels of thinking? How can I move up to that level of thinking? Because that's where the value, as a human being, I can create more of the value now.
Let me ask you this question, because some people may say that, well, we're not all cut out to be thinkers in that sense, right?
True.
Some people are maybe developers, right? And they're very good developers. What would you say to the type of person? For example, there's a question here, which I think you have answered in a sense, but there's a question here that says, what are the key skills in demand out there? I imagine that for this individual that's asked this question, maybe what they are saying is, look, I just want to put food on the table for now. I just want to take care of my family. Therefore, anything to do, I will happily take that. Right? So, what do you say to those kind of people that say, look, I'm not in the thinking space, I'm a doer? How do you balance those two things?
Now the thing is, the even if you're not in the thinking space, automation will not take away our ability to be human. So when we want to people will not, for instance, I'm trying to imagine hotels. Hotel is that's a very good example. So automation can create robots that will serve or deliver quite a number of the things that the business wants to. So there are hotels right now where you can go to, you walk into the lobby and there is nobody doing customer service. You walk into the lobby and you paid online. You go in there, you put your card on. It opens the door for you. You go off the lift. You get into the room. A voice comes and says, "Oh, hello, Mr. Olutunbi. You're welcome to 3 lovely days in XYZ hotel." And that's, as a novelty, that's an exciting experience. As a reality, we are human beings. We are relational human beings.
Yeah,
You and I look at how um, COVID has shown us just how valuable hugging each other is to us,
yeah,
or being in the same space with each other, socializing with each other. Why are we having challenges with managing the spiraling pandemic? It's because we're wired to interact. So people are wired to interact. So, but what just needs to happen is, so if I'm doing customer service at the moment in the hotel, and people are saying your job is going extinct, I'm saying, how can I move what I'm doing now how can I find what is excellent about what I'm doing and make sure I latch it on to who I am? So there are different ways that you can deliver customer service.
all
You
right,
can,
we've got about 5 minutes left here,
yeah,
and there's a question I want you to deal with. It's an article that came out in Harvard Business Review earlier on in the week, uh,
yes,
that referenced the co-CEO model. Now, listen to what the article said. It says the truth is the archetype of the omnipotent CEO, the lone commander atop the corporate pyramid, is increasingly a relic of 20th century management thinking. There are some notable exceptions. Founders like Jeff Bezos, Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, these guys still command and control. What are your views on this model, first of all? And then, secondly, do you see this model working at all in Africa?
great, very good question, Akin. I did read with interest that article, which was highlighting how a CIO in Netflix was moved up to become a co-CEO with the founder of the business. And I think that the model in itself is influenced by a need, is driven by a need that organizations have. Now, whether you have that model in place or not, that need persists. Now, that need is what I would call diversity of thought at sea level. Diversity of thought, diversity of decision making power, diversity of inputs and initiative. There are many ways you can achieve that, but it's the mindset of the organization that matters the most. If you have a senior leadership team where the leader is not hierarchical, and mind you, even hierarchy is one of the things that the changes now is consigning to the dustbin. So the whole mindset of an organization that is hierarchical is changing.
Mhm.
It's changing. It's about people contributing to work. Because in the traditional context, you need that hierarchy to control people. People are now self-managed. Not everybody, though. You understand?
Mhm.
But the orientation towards self-management, self-awareness, self-actualization is increasing in an environment that is increasingly liberalized. If I
So do
don't
you
take
see the role growing in future in more
in Africa,
organizations? Not just
I
Africa,
I
but across many organizations. Do you see that working?
I don't. What I see is the mindset increasing. A mindset where we recognize that we may have one person who spearheads the organization, but there are many people, or quite a number of people, who bring input into the orientation that the organization follows. So the decision making and stuff like that. So even if it's one person, now that article has mentioned Jeff Bezos and co. But I can assure you, just like we could mention Sir Richard Branson, I can assure you that they leverage the insights of many people around them to build the organizations. There is no invisible leader anywhere. It's
Hmm.
a myth. There isn't any. So your style might be different in terms of how you extract the input from people. You understand? And so you might somebody who extracts the inputs and then makes it seem like it's your own. But the reality is that nobody is a colossus of knowledge. The quantum of knowledge resides in all of us who are in that environment contributing to the work. So the more diverse
Wow.
we are in terms of our thinking, the more diverse we are in terms of gender. That's why those sort of issues are becoming front of mind now. The more diverse we are at the top in terms of gender, in terms of thinking, the more open we are for difficult conversations to happen, and the more diverse we are in terms of embracing new orientations to the things that we're doing, the more progress the organization will make. So that is a core orientation. Now, that can be epitomized in the terms of an organizational structure that has a core CEO framework, or it may not, but embrace other people's ideas. Forward thinking businesses must at this time.
Wow. Wow. Bode, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We've run out of time. Do you have any last parting words for our viewers in 20 seconds or 30 seconds? Any last words?
In 20 seconds, I would say, think about as you are as an individual. There are people here watching who are leaders in organizations. There are people here watching who are just individuals, or you may be wearing the same cap, or you may be the CEO in your organization. Think about the individual, the teams, and the organizations, and think about ways of enhancing uh, uh, um, those three levels of your organization, or you as an individual. We have lots of resources on peoplesourceconsulting.com. There's a tool called Management Drives, which addresses these three levels and scales up value across the organization. And then there is a webinar which I would like to invite everyone to. You do need to email. Akin will share my email details, but email me. It's by invite only. But we are part of a global network called the Transformation League. And so we've got partners in France, in Spain, in Italy, in Australia, and we're coming together, and in Canada, and we're coming together, and North Africa as well. Sorry, and we're coming together on the 15th of next month to run a webinar looking at all these issues from the organizational, the team, and the individual levels. So if you join us then, you get perspectives beyond mine. I'm just speaking about what's going on in Africa, probably the echelons, the environments where I have functioned. But we're now cross fertilization of ideas, particularly if you're a very senior level, C-level person in your organization. You want to join us at that event. It's not paid, but you do need to register, and we'll send an invitation across to you. And then just keep in touch. We're a resource for you,
Fantastic.
our business, and myself as an individual.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Bode. I will join you in the studio in a minute. Thank you, all our viewers, for joining us tonight. I'm sure you have enjoyed this session. The clips are the footage is immediately available on YouTube. It's on Facebook. If you join via Instagram, you can look at the handles on the screen. The whole footage is available. Please do share this. There are also going to be snippets put on our Daily Motion channel that you can go back to, easily digestible snippets that I think we should just put out there. Share this and let other people know about it. Thank you for joining us tonight, and please do look forward to Thursday. We have Professor Bolaji Akinyemi again on Thursday, commenting on various international issues and how these things are impacting the global dynamic. So thank you for joining us. See you on Thursday.